Hey everybody, welcome to a special live bonus episode of the Nerf Herder Council. You got us on the road. It's JT and AJ.
We are officially on I-71 South. I'm going to a concert that I'm singing with my band today for St. Patrick's Day in Lima. And AJ, I believe it's 32 days until celebration, which means 32 days from now we'll be on this exact stretch of road heading down to Cincinnati to pick up our buddy Spikes and his girlfriend Celeste. And then we'll be on the road to Orlando.
You know what that means? Tomorrow, when our most recent episode of the show posts, we will be exactly 1 month from celebration.
Yeah.
31 calendar days.
I can't wait, dude.
The countdown begins. Crap, I still got to upload that audio to Steve for him to work on it.
Yeah, you should probably make sure that's done.
Good thing I got my computer with me.
Right.
Okay.
So, speaking of celebration, AJ and I got into a conversation a little bit ago where we were discussing the opening panel for celebration this year, which, for those of you who don't know, generally what they've done with the last couple celebrations is they opened the entire convention for the U.S. celebrations. It'll be Thursday morning. For the European ones, it's Friday morning. But they open the entire convention with a panel that basically sets the tone for the whole thing, and it's the big bombshell of the biggest news, the biggest whatever.
It's the opening ceremony.
Yeah, it's the opening ceremony. So what they did at the last one in Anaheim was the opening panel was the Episode 7 panel for The Force Awakens, and they brought out all the actors and actresses and stuff, and that's when they showed the official first big trailer. So the rumor this year was that they were going to do the Episode 8 panel. Kathleen Kennedy and Ryan Johnson are going to be there, so that was already confirmed. Well, then it was announced that they were doing the Episode 8 panel on Friday morning, and my immediate reaction was, why the hell would you do it on Friday? Like, what the heck? It's like the biggest... Why would you do that?
Yeah, that struck me as pretty weird, too.
Yeah.
As soon as they said that, I'm like, there's some shenanigans afoot for Thursday.
Right? I was just mad because I wanted to open the whole... I'm going to get in line at 6 p.m. on Wednesday night. I said, for Thursday's panel. But I didn't want to do it on Thursday night for Friday, so I was like, well, this sucks. Well, anyway, they've since announced that the opening panel is going to be the 40th anniversary of Star Wars panel. And as soon as I saw that, which I actually ended up seeing, I was on Twitter for something, and I happened to see the tweet come across pretty much within minutes of it going down. And as soon as they said that the opening panel on Thursday was the 40th anniversary of Star Wars, I immediately said to myself, I said, self, here's what I said. I said, George, they have to be bringing out George Lucas. I said, there's no way you're going to make the Episode 8 panel second fiddle to something that they're not just going to get up there and go, hey, remember how it's the 40th anniversary of Star Wars? I said, no, they're bringing out George Lucas. I guarantee they're opening the whole thing, 40th anniversary of Star Wars with George Lucas. And that has been all over the internet. Tons of other people have speculated on that. And AJ and I got into a discussion about it because he said, there's no way, man. He was barely at Celebration before when he owned it. He's not going to be there now. And I told him, I said, there's no other reason for them to open the whole thing with the 40th anniversary of Star Wars, because what are you going to do? Just get up there and talk about, remember how it's been 40 years? Remember all the Star Wars stuff you like? Yeah, we got it.
That's the thing about this whole 40th anniversary panel that's got me scratching my head. Celebration itself, by its very name, already does commemorate Star Wars every time the convention happens.
Yeah.
So how do you have an entire panel based around an anniversary of Star Wars?
Well, that's why George Lucas has to be the answer. I mean, what else are you going to do?
Yeah, I think instead of a massive Q&A, there's not unless they're going to detail like more product plans, more crap you can buy because it's been 40 years, what else are you going to do? It's got to be a Q&A panel of some sort of...
Yeah. Well, bigger, I mean, just saying, well, here's some more Star Wars stuff you can buy. A bigger deal would be George Lucas. I mean, because you're not going to make it out to have, like, the opening ceremony be about product placement when you have a whole entire movie coming out in 8 months. I mean, you're just not going to do that.
Maybe they'll use a CG George Lucas with Steven Stanton doing the voice.
It's going to be like the hologram thing.
Yeah,
like with Michael Jackson and Ronnie James Dio, now they're going to have a hologram George Lucas.
Exactly. Like Tarkin was just like the proving ground for the tech in in Rogue One so they could get George Lucas to come to Celebration whenever they wanted.
You know what it's going to be? It's going to be a hologram that looks real. Like you're going to think it's George Lucas, and he himself will have created it. And then all of a sudden they're going to go walk up to the hologram and put their hand through it, and everyone's going to go, what the heck just happened? And that's when they'll learn it's a hologram. And George Lucas is going to come out on stage himself and just throw a couple of fingers in the air and go, this is for all you prequel haters. Fuck you. Don't like CG, do ya? And then just walk off, and that'll be our George Lucas sighting.
F-bombs from the mighty GL. I love it. Okay.
Wouldn't that be awesome?
See, I would love this because we've been to 3 celebrations now.
Yep.
And most of our audience has probably been to more, I'm sure. But the one guy that we've never seen, has he even been... I think he was at, the first Celebration 5? Was he the keynote?
No, he wasn't ever the keynote that I know of. I know he was at 6. I know he was at 5 as well because Don went to 5 and he actually got onto the show floor an hour early, and he actually had pictures of George walking around.
Right, like I know he's
that was at 5.
I know he's attended, but as far as being on the schedule of events, I don't think he's ever been at one that we've been to. No.
Well, think about it. You can't put him on the schedule of events because the whole thing will shut down. I mean, you're going to have, if there's 150,000 tickets sold, 150,000 people are going to want to be there, so.
Well, I don't know anymore because, he's not in charge of Star Wars, so who really cares?
Just shut up. But,
not going to get trolled on that one, huh?
No. I already know what you're trying to do there. And it's not funny. But, yeah, I know he was at...
I'm still going to pick that fight.
Go ahead, pick that fight. He created Star Wars, man.
If he writes stories based on characters he didn't create, if he writes stories based on what Disney has now made, especially if he's not officially affiliated with the product, that's Legends then.
But you didn't make that point in the episode. You didn't say if he's writing stories based on characters that came after the sale. That's a different story.
That's why I'm saying it now. It's a new episode.
Oh.
It's
fine.
A new dawn.
Well, well played.
That's a book title.
Yes?
Probably didn't even know that.
Oh, yes, I did. It's where they introduced Ray Sloan.
Yes.
And I have no idea who that is because I never finished that book. And then I heard she's in the Aftermath trilogy, and I'm like, eh.
Well, she was a lieutenant in A New Dawn, which introduced Hera and Kanan before Rebels began. It's how they got together.
Why didn't they name her Dawn Sloan? Then it could be like a new... Anyway. Sorry. New Dawn... Anyway.
Wow. Wow, dude, that's a reach. And anyway, so she's a lieutenant in that, and in Aftermath, she's Grand Admiral. She's a through line. She's risen through the ranks of the Empire throughout the course of the original trilogy.
Is Thrawn mentioned in the Aftermath trilogy at all?
Yes.
Is he alive or dead?
Not mentioned.
Okay.
They only give him credit for coming from wild space, which is where the remnants of the Empire slink off to.
Yeah. By the way, speaking of that, a little off topic, I think I'm actually going to buy the Thrawn book at Celebration because they have 3 separate covers for that. It comes out the week of Celebration, and Timothy Zahn's going to be there signing copies and selling it. But they have a Celebration-specific cover that's going to be on sale. I think I'm going to buy that because, first of all, I want to read it.
That'd be a cool souvenir.
Yeah, I'm kind of getting into the whole Thrawn story, and I think I want that special cover. I think that'd be kind of fun. So
yeah, nice.
Kind of like how I'm going to be in the Testament book. It's a whole other story, but one of my favorite bands is Testament, and they're releasing a biography, and I signed up for news updates.
A good story for another time.
Yes. So I'm going to be in the Testament book. So I'll be in the Testament book and the Dream Theater book. I'm all over the place. I'm a literary juggernaut. So, but anyway, yeah. So Ray Sloan, New Dawn.
We were originally talking about George Lucas at the 40th anniversary panel.
Yes.
If you want to go back to our original topic,
I just don't see what else they could do. I really don't.
What else would you want to see to celebrate the 40th anniversary?
Being completely honest, I don't need to see anything. The only thing I take that back. You know what I would want to see is if they have unreleased footage that they haven't even put out in the Blu-ray and all that stuff. Show me like deleted scenes, like all sorts of just stuff you would never ever see that they haven't even released and may never will.
You know, that's actually possible given that they scrounged up B-roll to put in Rogue One.
Yeah.
So there's clearly stuff we haven't seen that's still usable in some form.
Well, I've actually seen a 3.5-hour cut of episode 4. Don has it. It's very rare, and one of his music buddies who's got connections actually got him a copy of it. It's like the pre-cut. So it's got all the, you know, when you see like Empire of Dreams, and it's when...
So it's got like Biggs and the crew.
Oh, yeah. It's got tons of stuff with all that stuff. There's so much in there. And it's obviously not finished, and it looks like crap. But, I mean...
Where Luke looks up and actually sees the Tantive 4 being shot at
the
by the
little
Star
speck
Destroyer.
in the sky. Yeah. I mean, it's really cool, but, I mean, it's long as hell. And it's very interesting because watching it, you can totally see why they cut stuff out, and it's very obvious what didn't fit with the story and all this. I mean, it's really fascinating, especially if you know the backstory. Like if you read the J.W. Rinsler books, to actually see what they cut out and how much was actually in the movie initially and what it became is really pretty fascinating.
Filmmaking in general is fascinating that way. The way you film so much stuff, and George Lucas in particular, you know, it was evolving as he was filming it, to where like the amount of crap that gets at least put on camera so it can later be cut out if it's not good enough. It's just amazing to see the evolution like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's, well, and to your point, like it's like watching the deleted scenes on the prequel DVDs and stuff, where you have all this stuff that didn't make it, and when you really put it into the greater context of the movie, you can see where, like, yeah, that maybe doesn't matter as much. All right, I can see why they pulled that out. Like, you can kind of see from their perspective how much it mattered or didn't matter.
And how much they hated Shak Ti.
Yeah.
Boy, they killed her a bunch of ways. They're like, we don't know exactly which one we're going to use, but she gonna die.
She was probably going to survive, but she was in some contract dispute after they started filming, so they had to have her. So they're like, all right, you bitch, we're going to kill you then. And they killed her like 7 different ways, and we saw 2 of them.
Mm-hmm. And then they killed her again in Force Unleashed, didn't they?
I don't remember.
Didn't she get eaten by some beast on Felucia? Didn't Mara's brood, like, feed her to it?
Don't forget, I fell asleep for most of you finishing that game.
Well, in any case, Shak Ti must be the most hated Jedi on the Council.
Yeah, right.
She was cool in Clone Wars.
Yeah, in terms of what I would want to see at the 40th anniversary panel, first of all, and no offense to Star Wars, but I'm going to that panel instead of the Episode 8 panel because I'm pretty sure they're going to have George Lucas trot it out. If it was just going to be like, hey, yay Star Wars, I'd be like, all right, I yay Star Wars every day. Like, I celebrate Star Wars every day. So I'm going to go to the Episode 8 panel because I want to see the trailer and I want to find out what they're going to give us for food online, since, you know, J.J. Abrams did pizza and, you know, Gareth Edwards did donuts, and I want to see what Rian Johnson's going to do to one-up them. So,
I think that's actually something they've given thought to. Is this now like a meme, basically?
You'd have to... Honestly, if I was Rian Johnson, I would. Because you know the fans know about it. I mean, that's the one thing about Star Wars, is the fans find all this stuff out, and it becomes... I mean, it gets legs.
So now being fed overnight is a thing that the director has to do?
Well, dude, you remember for Celebration Europe last year, when people were, you know, tweeting about the donuts, they said, you know, J.J. Abrams gave us pizza, Gareth Edwards gave us donuts. So... I mean, there's so many cool things you could do. I just wonder what they're going to do going forward, especially like at celebrations.
I hope they do ribs.
It's going to be like a 5-course like filet dinner eventually. Think of it, butlers for every single person.
Like, how was the panel? Well, the 3rd course, the soup course wasn't quite up to snuff.
The béarnaise was a little bit saucy for me.
But the salad had a delightful balsamic vinaigrette.
Right? I just want to see, one of the things I would love to be a part of is, I think it was San Diego Comic-Con for The Force Awakens. Did you hear about this? You had to, where J.J. Abrams did a panel, and he literally, the surprise was he took the entire panel outside, and they had an orchestra set up, and they got a private orchestra concert with like an hour's worth of Star Wars music.
I don't think that's going to happen again. I think that was all, you know, lead up to the new Star Wars.
Whatever.
Now that we're in the new Star Wars, I don't think they're going to blow it out that hard ever again.
I just think it'd be the greatest thing to be a part of something crazy like that.
Yeah, I think the most incriminating evidence that something big is going down at this panel is the lack of information.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the 40th anniversary. We're bumping our new movie panel to the next day, and we've announced Kathleen Kennedy and Warwick Davis.
Yeah.
Wow. That's way to blow the doors off the thing.
Well, they said there's some major surprises in store for fans.
Yeah.
And again, just the fact that the opening ceremony isn't...
What if they tell us who Snoke is?
Could you imagine? It really is Mace Windu. F you! And they run off stage.
Yeah. Welcome to Star Wars Celebration Orlando. It's the 40th anniversary of Star Wars. Mace Windu is Snoke. Mic drop.
And you know what that'll get from me? Oh, come on!
Careful, dude. You got to sing in a couple hours.
That's okay. I can do one.
So yeah, outside of George Lucas, I don't know. At this point, Star Wars has been covered to death. I mean, we've even got a show about it.
Yeah.
So how many more major surprises can be in store that are backward-looking instead of forward-looking?
Yeah.
And obviously an anniversary panel, they're not going to talk about what's upcoming. They're going to talk about what's been.
Yeah. It's also, and not a lot of people have mentioned this, and I don't know the exact date, but it's basically almost a 5-year anniversary of him selling it. So it's been 5 years.
Oh
so
my
that's
God,
kind of
yeah.
I mean, it's 2012, so you've got that. And again, what are you going to do? There's nothing bigger that you can do for a 40th anniversary of Star Wars than get the guy that made it.
Plus
and have him tell stories.
And doesn't it seem like, as fun as it is to have all this new Star Wars, there's still a little George Lucas-sized hole in every fan's heart, knowing that he's been cut out of the picture?
Yeah. I've said it before. It's different. You know, Episode 7, that's one of my things when everyone's like, it feels like Star Wars. To me, it doesn't. And it's not because it's not a great movie. It's just there's something about George Lucas's fingerprints on those original 6 movies that isn't there. And I can't quantify it. I've said many times on our show, I wish I could, but I just can't. There's something, like you said, it's like fantasy. It's like it's almost like the movies are like hazy around the edges when you watch them. It's like a little dream or something. I don't know what it is, but he just had some way of doing it, and I think the closest I ever came was when I was talking about, again, the Empire of Dreams documentary, when Steven Spielberg said, directors have their own style, like Kafka make Kafka pictures. I make Steven Spielberg. George Lucas makes George Lucas pictures, and it's, he just has that certain way.
Yeah, now that we've seen more of the direction that Disney is going in, it feels like George Lucas made movies that were supposed to be timeless.
Yeah.
That's why he chose a directorial style and a soundtrack style that was throwback.
Yeah.
He wasn't trying. He was trying to blow it out with the most modern effects, but he was telling stories in a way, especially the original New Hope.
Oh yeah,
was very much like they've always said, a silent movie where the soundtrack and the visuals were driving things.
He said you know the story without hearing any dialogue.
Right. So they age well because they're made in a timeless fashion. Seems like Disney is very much more like of the day.
Yeah.
They're throwing in modern references and modern movie making techniques to make it look like it's in step with the movies coming out today instead of the movies that can stand the test of time.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree.
So I think the thing that would really, if there's anything that could catapult Star Wars any higher right now, it would be, obviously when the sale happened, George did his little PR tour and said, the one company he would ever want to do business with would be Disney, and he trumped it up as a good thing and all that, and then he disappeared.
Yeah.
For him to come back 5 years in and basically give his seal of approval to what they've done with the franchise and what they're going to do moving forward, that right there would legitimize the new regime in a way that could never be done, no matter how much they put out on their own.
I never ever thought of it that way. That is an excellent point, because he said that he loved Rogue One, and he said that he liked Episode 7, but his main comment that people spread everywhere was that it wasn't the story he would have told. So I think that kind of is him going, So, but that's an incredible point. Yeah, it would really legitimize what they're doing. And it also, you know what? He's been so vilified by so many fans. We talked about it in the last episode and whatnot, that to bring him back in and kind of like make him a part of it again, even just at a celebration to talk and go, yeah, I love Star Wars, you know, thank you guys for making it what it is, whatever. To have him be a small part of it again, like you said, it would fill that little hole. And that's a very good point, man. That's a very, very good point.
Yeah, if this was high school, it'd be like the popular kid hanging out with the nerd.
Yeah.
You know, and everyone would give the nerd a chance.
Yep.
Like God, can you imagine? There would be that little bit of backlash from the true haters that would take Disney, who they, you know, hold up on a pedestal because it's not George Lucas, and they're turning their backs on all the crap they hated that George did. As soon as Disney puts their arm around George and says, no, this guy's the real deal, and we back everything that he does, and he backs everything we do, they would probably decry Disney at that point and be like, oh, they sold out. They totally sold out to all the loyalists and stuff, just to have something to bitch about.
Yeah. And you know what's funny? I always laugh about that, people that, you know, like you just said, the really hardcore haters. Because let's say they're walking down the street and they bump into George Lucas. They're going to shit their pants and go fanboy. They're not going to go, you shouldn't have made Greedo shoot first. You're an asshole.
I've been waiting for this for a long time, George.
Yeah, they're not going to do that. They're going to think that about a month later. Oh, well, I should have said, because it'll take them a month to get over the fact, holy shit, I met George Lucas. And I love Star Wars. And it's like, people don't think about that. You know, it's like, the guy gave, like I said it at the last episode, the guy gave us Star Wars. I mean, tell me, like, honestly, like, I laugh about this because I think, you know, we get the celebration. Let's say I get in, let's say I'm one of the first people in line, and I get in, and I'm like front row center for this whole thing. You know, they always film, you know, they always have cameras going. Yep. If that's me and George Lucas comes out, they're going to get a 41-year-old grown man full-on sobbing in the front row.
You're going to be like the girls on the Ed Sullivan show at the Beatles concert.
Dude! And it's not going to be like, oh my God, George Lucas, but it's like, just a little backstory on me. I'm one of those ridiculous assholes that when I get super excited about something, I tear up. So it's not that I'm overly emotional. It's just I get so excited that I tear up. It's stupid. So anyway, they would catch me. George Lucas would walk out, and I would just go, oh my God. Like, I'd be like, I'm George Lucas, holy crap. And they'd catch me freaking sobbing on camera. And then I picture they'd see me go, look at this guy in the front crying. And then I'd cry more because they're pointing me out at Celebration. That's so awesome, yeah!
See, I'd just be laughing my ass off because you're calling it right now.
Dude.
And if the thing that you predicted comes true, you're still going to be as equally shocked as if you never thought of it.
Of course. I mean, but in my defense, you can't say that you would be any different because every celebration we've been to, we've gone to the main entrance the night before and looked around, and you and I get there, we just start crying and hug like, we made it, buddy. We're at Celebration again. We did it. Oh my God.
Well, last time we did that at 5 a.m. and that was after a day of no, that was 2 days after. I'm sorry, I thought we were on the Sunset Strip earlier, but no, we weren't.
No, that was the day before.
But we had definitely been taking advantage of all of our free time and the liquor store around the corner. So I think that might not have been pure emotion. That might have been liquid emotion.
Well, when you combine that much alcohol with that much excitement,
yeah, true.
Especially me. Basically, I got to see where Van Halen came from. It's like a mecca for music.
That whole trip was just a pilgrimage for you.
Yeah. I mean, I got pictures at the spot where Van Halen had to have their little plaque on the sidewalk in front of the whiskey where they did the Dreams video for the Live Right Here, Right Now album and stuff. It's like, I mean, I got to see this stage. All my favorite bands played and have drinks in there. I had Jack Daniels in a place where all my favorite musicians chugged Jack Daniels back in the day. Like, I got to see the Rainbow. I got to sit in Lemmy's seat. I got to see the private room where all the rock stars party, and it's like, and then you put me in front of Star Wars, and it's like, oh my God,
emotional overload.
Yeah, man, that trip. I remember getting home, and it was like, you know, not to be gay, but my first thing was I really missed Steph because I was newly married at that point, 6 months. But beyond that, I was just, everything was so. I mean, I met Jeremy Bullock on the fly. I met Ray Park on the fly. All this different stuff had happened to me, and I was just completely beside myself. So I got home and I slept for like 24 hours. I was just fried.
You know, it's like when you get a puppy and you take him to like the dog park, and he goes running around like crazy, and he says, "Have so much fun, so much fun, so much fun." And then you get him home, and he's just comatose because he has spent every ounce of energy.
That was you. Puppy.
That was you.
That puppy.
Absolutely. So let me turn this question on its ear a little bit.
Okay.
So we're assuming it has to be George Lucas because it's the 40th anniversary and there's a major surprise. So I'm assuming that conclusion was arrived at because we're guessing that the panel's going to focus on the origin of Star Wars 40 years ago.
Yes.
And who else but George Lucas could possibly be a major surprise?
There's one other one.
This is my question, so go for it.
Harrison Ford. He's never appeared at Celebration. He finally was okay with coming back to Star Wars. They could beg him. He's the one actor that everyone has always said they want to see, even more so than Mark Hamill. Everyone wants Harrison Ford or George Lucas, and if they got Harrison Ford to come out and talk about Star Wars, he's never done it.
Especially if they manage to get both of them. Can you imagine that?
Well, Mark Hamill's already going to be there.
Yeah, Mark Hamill's very available. I think that's why the luster is kind of off of that one.
No, well, I would disagree with that. If you watch his panel from last year, I still watch his stuff, even though he's been back for a few years doing the celebrations. I still get goosebumps because he's a fanboy like we are.
Oh yeah, he's a great panel. He doesn't even have a host. He is the host and the entertainment.
I just want to hug that guy.
Right?
Because he's so into Star Wars and he's got such a good career outside of it, but he understands what it means to us and he embraces that like nobody else, like Carrie Fisher used to. That's what's going to suck, is not having her there. That's what's going to be sad. Because she was like him. She loved the Star Wars thing. I told a story on our show about how, Don met her in a gas station and she was super sweet, super funny, and she embraced the Star Wars fandom. She embraced what it meant to be a part of Star Wars and what it meant to us.
And it was super cool having them back in the movies, too, because they were coming to celebrations, and that was great for some throwback to the original trilogy, but they were, I hate to say it this way, but like yesterday's news. They weren't a current part of Star Wars.
Yeah.
So for them to come in and now be relevant again made it all the more special because they had new stories to tell.
Yeah.
There's only so many panels you can do and stories you can tell before you're just repeating yourself for another audience.
Yep.
And now with YouTube and internet coverage, everyone's seen and heard those stories already.
Yeah.
But you're right, Harrison Ford.
I'm getting goosebumps thinking about this, man.
Harrison Ford has never done that, so any stories he's going to tell are going to be all new.
Yeah, he's never done an actual fan panel to sit there and be interviewed solely about Star Wars and just be surrounded by Star Wars nerds. He's done it in terms of doing the rounds for
Force Awakens.
He
did Comic-Con that way.
Yeah, Comic-Con. Yeah, but it's never been like, hey, I'm going to Star Wars just to talk about Star Wars for Star Wars fans.
And only as me, not as part of the ensemble up here panel, so 7 people get questions instead of just me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to hear what kind of stories he's got to tell.
I think, and this is an interesting question, I don't know if I would freak out more if George Lucas came out or if Han Solo came out. And I'm sorry, Harrison Ford will always be Han Solo, Indiana Jones to me, and that shaped my fucking childhood. Sorry for the F-bomb. But they're my 2 favorite movie characters ever. And the fact that the same guy played him, if I got to see him in person, I would just be like, what is happening? Like, my brain would explode. I'd be like, that's Indiana Jones. No, it's Han Solo. No, it's Indiana Jones. No, it's Han Solo. I wouldn't remember anything because I would just be sitting there with my jaw on the floor the whole time. Just going, what is this? Like, holy crap.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so George Lucas, Harrison Ford. Is there anybody else from the start of Star Wars, from the dawn of Star Wars, that would possibly be a good interview? I mean, is there anybody else who hasn't continued to be a part of it that would be a major surprise?
You know what would be
I mean, at this point, like, John Knoll just had his own movie come out, so not really, while it would be a great interview, I'm sure, it wouldn't be that much of a surprise. Dennis Muren, same thing.
You know what would
Ben Burt, same thing.
You know what would be a really cool thing they could do?
What?
And I know one of these names would definitely do Celebration. I'm almost positive. What if, and again, I'm going back to Empire of Dreams, what if it was a panel about the influence of Star Wars in the history, and they had, if they can't get George Lucas, get all of his friends that were making movies at the time and knew the backstory of Star Wars from like 73, like Spielberg, Brian De Palma,
Coppola,
Francis Ford Coppola. I was going to say, what if you got all these legendary directors up there talking about George and all this stuff? I mean, that would be another one.
That would be momentous. Because that transcends Star Wars at that point.
What if they brought out George Lucas and Steven Spielberg? Could you imagine seeing that interview? Oh my God. Could you imagine that?
That would be incredible. That would blow my mind. I would mark out hard for that one. George Lucas would be huge enough, but to get Spielberg and Lucas in the same room for an hour to just talk about what filmmaking in the mid-'70s was like when they were both coming up, holy crap. That would be so amazing.
Just like
you want to talk about breaking the internet.
Yeah. Well, and people that were there while he was writing Star Wars, while it was just his a preliminary idea. I mean, stuff like that, to be able to see, you're like, what the hell? Yeah, I mean, there's not too much that you can do.
Yeah, the one good and bad thing about Star Wars is the fandom is so ravenous for all kinds of information. How much more is there to trove? I mean, documentaries and featurettes and special features. I mean, what hasn't been covered now that they can possibly go on and surprise fans with at this point? Aside from getting people that haven't talked that much about it. And yeah, you're right. Other filmmakers, those would be the people to get.
Like I said, there's just not much. Again, just the placement of the panel itself as the opening ceremony has to be something huge for it to trump the Last Jedi panel. Because you're getting the director, you're getting Kathleen Kennedy, you're going to get John Boyega and Daisy Ridley and all them. You're going to get all those people at the Last Jedi panel. You're going to get footage of the movie. The first footage, official footage you're going to see is coming out.
Yeah.
The whole world's waiting for that. So if you're going to trump something the entire planet is waiting for, it has to be something enormous. And the only thing that could be that enormous would be George Lucas. Or you could get Harrison Ford. But even that's more of like a fanboy thing. Because if you go, they opened the whole Star Wars celebration with Harrison Ford, people are going to go, okay. But if you say George Lucas, that's something the world perks its ear up and goes, what?
I mean, by the way, credit to Disney, because they do have a new movie coming out this year, and typically in recent years, Celebration has been used as a vehicle for the big launch of the new movie.
That's exactly another reason why I say it has to be something huge.
For them to put their own new project on the back burner, or at least like on the side stage, so to speak, to let Star Wars itself, the fact that it's been 40 years and celebrate the entire franchise, for that to take center stage, that's incredibly cool of them to be like, you know what, we're going to pass on the marketing opportunity for our next big thing and just actually go back to the core of this whole event, which is to celebrate all things Star Wars instead of the new thing that we want you to buy.
Well, it's like I said when we were on our Thanksgiving episode, that it's cool because they actually give a shit about the fans. Like, I mean, they know damn well they're going to get our money. They just know it. I mean,
that's the whole purpose of the event now, really.
Yeah, I hate to use this analogy because they're my favorite band of all time. It's the reason I'm a musician. But Van Halen, they don't give us anything until they tour, and then they're like, hey, we're going on tour, come to the concerts. Because they know fans like me, I'm going to go to... They can crap on me for 20 years, and as soon as they go, we're going on tour, I'm buying concert tickets. Yep. I don't give a crap. If I have to reach up, a yak's ass to pull my tickets out and get my arm covered in animal poop to do it, I'm getting those Van Halen tickets. I'm that kind of fan. And Star Wars fans are the same way. If you slap Star Wars on something and say it's a movie, we're going to go. So they could literally do nothing but put the movie out and just crap on us going, they're going to give us our money. But they don't. They're trying to keep us engaged the same way Lucasfilm did when it was an independent company run by George Lucas. They're doing it, and they're even expanding it, Just the fact that they would do this panel, let's say George Lucas comes out, just giving us that panel and giving us George Lucas is such a handshake to us going, here you go, thanks for being a Star Wars fan, we're giving you the biggest thing we possibly can.
Yeah.
They don't have to do that, but they're doing it.
That's very true. They did this at first, actually, if you remember. They credited George, but they pretty much just wanted to shift the focus forward as quickly as possible to keep all eyes on what they were doing. I like the fact that they seem to be comfortable enough now in what they're doing and the fact that the fans have embraced it, that now they're accepting of everything that came before.
Yeah.
Instead of just crediting it, they're actually like bringing it into the fold to make it one seamless continuity instead of like, check out all the great new ideas we've got. We're like, no, well, okay, now we're going to start mentioning some prequel stuff. We'll put a turbo tank in our new movie.
Yeah.
And we'll reference Jedi and Sith in the latest Saga installment.
Yeah.
And it's so cool the way that they're circling back now and realizing that it needs to be one cohesive unit instead of a changing of the guard.
Yeah. One of the things I've wondered is,
I was really afraid when Disney took over that they were going to take the stance of, it's ours now, let us show you how much better it could be.
yeah.
Instead, they're just working alongside what came before instead of trying to outdo it.
Yep, that's a good point. It actually ties into what I was actually about to say. Was that one of the things I've always wondered is, like, obviously they paid $4 billion for Lucasfilm, so they know that it's a viable financial property for them. But and everybody knows that Star Wars is the biggest film franchise in history. You know, so it's out there. They know that. But I wonder if once they actually got their hands on it and then they started doing things with it themselves instead of seeing it from an outsider's perspective, if they really got a new perspective on the fan base going, holy crap, we knew fans are dedicated, but not like this.
Yeah, it could be.
I really wonder if because they really have, like with episode 7, they basically, all the promo materials were anti-prequel, you know, tongue-in-cheek anti-prequel, but now they're starting to slowly bring stuff back into it and really expand into areas where they originally looked like they weren't going to, you know, touch. And so I really wonder if they're behind the scenes going, man, we knew Star Wars fans were into this, but not like this.
And I think they're also, again, brilliant on their part. I think they're leaning on their accepted new continuity, all the stuff that they're putting out that fans are embracing, and they're using that goodwill to reach back and connect to parts that maybe fans aren't so good with, because they feel like they can use the goodwill of their canon material to make fans embrace the parts that they didn't so much embrace with, like the prequels, for example, stuff like that.
That actually,
so, you know, when something from episode 8 or one of the new books reaches back and says, we're going to talk about Felucia for a minute, and then fans are like, oh, well, if Disney's talking about Felucia, then maybe Felucia's not so bad.
Yeah. I actually had this idea for a show the other day, and it's good that you bring it up. I think something I want to do on our show is the topic of, can Disney change the perception of the prequels? Can they bring the prequel era back into canon and start expanding on it in a way that people are into the characters and stories and go, okay, this wasn't so bad for the people that hate it. They may not go back and watch the movies and love them, but they would get into that time period and go, okay, this is really cool too.
Yeah.
I mean, I wonder if they can exert that kind of influence and make something so badass that people might look at the prequel storyline and go, this isn't as bad as I thought it was.
I think the trick there is that the prequel era is when the storytelling really blew up, and there was so many different forms between TV shows and comic books and books. And at this point, even though it's not canon anymore, it doesn't count, I don't know how much room there is to tell stories in that era without people still being gassed by how much we already got.
I think there's a ton, personally.
I mean, like the next animated series after Rebels is said to take place during the sequel trilogy era, which makes perfect sense because it's all new ground. I can't imagine them taking the time to tell stories in the prequel era and people not going, well, we already have Clone Wars and Rebels, and I remember all those books that don't count, but I still remember them.
I see. We'll get into this on the show when we talk about it for this episode. But people really turned off to that stuff. So I don't know how many fans are actually into. I mean, think about just the Clone Wars cartoon. You either have people that are completely indifferent to it, or they absolutely love it. There is no in between.
I think the most fertile prequel telling ground still is prior to episode 1, like the Darth Plagueis era. That book was great.
Yeah, that was a fantastic book.
And between 1 and 2. Obviously, the Clone Wars TV series covered between 2 and 3 just fine. Yeah. But the lead up to episode 2, I think there's still plenty to tell there because you still got the fall of Dooku. Yes. And the rise of Grievous. And so many other characters that just need their stories explained.
I still want that Sifo Dyas story because that's one of the... I think that if the prequels had been popular, I think that would be a standalone movie that they would do, because it's one of those things that is so, when they bring it up in the movie, you're like, what the hell? Like, this one guy you've never heard of all of a sudden creates all of this. Like, that is a story that would be perfect to plug in there. But because of the unpopularity of the prequels with a big segment of the fan base, they're not going to do it.
Do you think George Lucas has that story? I mean, with how fluid his storytelling is, and the fact that he's, in some cases, writing it on set. I mean, you saw with episode 2, it was rewrite after rewrite after rewrite.
Yeah.
Do you think he actually has that story in his mind, or if it was pretty much like the Clone Wars reference from episode 4, where it was something that he generally had scribbled out, but really did not have the details of at the time?
If you want my honest opinion about things,
Because he did say that we were going to learn that story in episode 3, and we never did.
I think he's still got his fingers in Star Wars itself. He made too many friends and knows too many people that still work at Lucasfilm. It's still the same crew. That I have to think that every once in a while that they might text him with those quick questions of like, you know, like what color blood does Yoda have, and he spits out. I really think every once in a here and there he actually gives an idea, and the story group comes up with it, and that he actually was in a private conversation with somebody or a text message or a phone call, and they brought it to the table like it was their idea, but it was actually something they talked to George about to bounce off him. I really do.
I gotta think that at least a couple people still have his ear. I'm guessing anyone that he used to work with, like Pablo Hidalgo, Dave Filoni especially,
Yep.
like those people at least, even if they don't officially go through Lucasfilm channels to reach him, they probably still bounce their ideas off him every once in a while. Well, I don't know, because I mean, even Dave Filoni said that the dynamic shifted throughout the course of the TV series, where at first it was George Lucas telling Dave Filoni story ideas he had, and Dave would go off and make the shows, and then it became Dave being the one having the ideas and making sure that George was okay with them.
Yeah.
To then, Rebels being entirely Dave's invention. So I don't know, what role do you think George would have with that kind of stuff? Do you think this is something they would talk about at the panel? Like,
no, they'll never. And even if they ask him, he'll say no.
Yeah, I'm guessing officially he has no involvement.
Imagine
it's like Mission Impossible,
Yeah. Imagine the bombshell if George Lucas comes out and says, "Yeah, I still give ideas to the story group." You just can't do that. You literally can't do that.
Yeah, true. Let's say George Lucas was at the 40th anniversary panel, and it's a Q&A. What question would you have for George?
Wow, I never thought about that.
See, I was thinking this would be a tricky one, because you want your question to be answered, so you instantly have to rule out some of the best ones. If you ask him, like, what was your idea for episode 7?
Yeah.
That's not going to get answered.
Yeah.
So you got to give him a softball question that's still interesting to hear.
I think, and this is just, I would have to think about this a long time, but off the top of my head, if I'm spitting something out, I would ask him what plot point he was most proud of coming up with for the original 6 saga films.
Ooh, that is a good one.
Because it'd be easy to go, oh, well, Darth Vader being Luke Skywalker's father, but what if there's something small that he would say, well, this, and it brings out a new outlook on the movie. Like, well, I never looked at it that way, but it is a pivotal point that you don't really notice. Like,
what if he says that the deleted scene of Greedo bullying Anakin from episode 1?
Hey, if I get to see George Lucas in person and George Lucas trolls the prequel haters, I will be the one guy, and the whole place will be silent, except for you'll hear one guy stand up and go, yeah, get him, George, and then I get removed from Celebration. But it would be worth it.
I love how we keep coming up with different ways we're going to get thrown out of the event.
Because we're the nerd fans, dude. We're the ones that would do stupid stuff like that. That's the whole point of our show.
We're the scruffy-looking ones.
Right?
All right, on that note, I think we should wrap this up. We're at about our 45-minute limit.
Sounds good.
And we're in towards Lima, so, we're on to the show.
Yep.
Time to rest those vocal cords, buddy.
Yeah, right? I'm a little scratchy.
Yep. All right, well, hope you enjoyed the bonus episode. JT, any closing comments?
No, I'm pumped up for Celebration. As I always say at the end of every other episode, thanks for tuning in and catching the show, guys. Hope you like it. Send us feedback, send us comments, buy a t-shirt, and all that good stuff.
If you're listening to this today, you can look forward to our regularly scheduled episode coming out tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, which is a return to stupid fan theories, among other topics.
Yes.
So hope you guys are having a good weekend, and we will catch you next time.
32 days to celebration. Woo!